My name is Stephen Kazan. I'm a trial lawyer in Oakland, California, and I want to talk to you today about the sources of the law under which our civil justice system operates. In the beginning of Genesis, we have the creation story and Noah and the flood and the story of Abraham and his family. Early on in the 4th chapter of Genesis, we learn the story of Cain and Abel. Cain, as the oldest child, was charged with tilling the soil, raising the crops, while his younger brother Abel was in charge of taking care of the flocks. Cain went out into the field, killed his brother Abel. And the Bible tells us that God came back, spoke to Cain, asked him, "Where is your brother?" Cain's response was, "I know not, am I my brother's keeper?" God's response to that was, "What have you done?" It wasn't really a question because obviously nothing happened that God didn't know about. It was instead an expression, I think, of shock and horror. Here was the very beginning of human society, the first family, the first son, the second son, and at the very beginning, this horrible act, this horrible crime and injustice occurred. The Hebrew word that's translated as keeper is shomer, which truly means more watchman or guardian. And that really is the statement that Cain is making, am I responsible for my brother? The answer, of course, for most of us, I think, is yes, you are. And it is because of that responsibility that we all have for each other that the law has arisen, and that is what the law is designed, in essence, to protect and preserve. It's designed to define for us what the scope of those responsibilities are that we have to each other. As a result of the story of Cain and Abel, God establishes the rule of law, and the Bible tells us in Genesis that God decides to disclose to Abraham what's going on with Sodom and Gomorrah. And God says that the plan for Abraham is that he can command his children and his household so that they keep the way of the Lord, to do righteousness and justice. These are, in essence, the core values that God expects of Abraham and of all his descendants and of all of us. As part of the process of ensuring that this is what happens in the future, in Deuteronomy, the Bible tells us that God decrees that judges and officers shalt thou make thee in all thy gates. These are the city gates. That's where people come into the city to do business. That's where they leave from. That's the most public area of the city. So God is ordaining justice and judges, not in hidden courts in the royal palaces, but out there in public, in the open, where people can have access to justice. God ordains that judges should judge the people with righteous judgment. Justice shalt thou follow, that thou mayest live. This becomes a core value of our civilization, the pursuit of justice, the entitlement to justice. Our modern civil justice law, our tort law, in fact has its foundation in the Bible and reflects some evolution of belief, some increase of knowledge, maybe some increased sophistication. But when anybody tells you that there's something wrong with our civil justice system, I think it's reasonable to say, hey, it's just from the Bible. It's the way civilization has been in the Western world for 3,000 years. There's nothing wrong with it. People ought to be held responsible for what they do and pay for the damage they cause. Thank you.